Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Bhajachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajachana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24, Text 46, the renunciation of Kadama Muni. Okay. Atmanam Sarvabhuteshu Bhagavantam Avishtitam Apashyat Sarvabhutani Bhagavati Apichatmani Atmanam Sarvabhuteshu Bhagavantam Avashtitam Apashyat Sarvabhutani Bhagavati Apichatmani Atmanam Sarvabhuteshu Bhagavantam Avastitam Apashyal Sarvabhutani Bhagavati Apichatmani Vaishnavis. Manam Sarvabhuteshu Bhagavantam Avashtitam Apashyat Sarvabhutani Bhagavati Apichatmani. Atmanam, the super soul, Sarvabhuteshu, in all living beings, Bhagavantam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Avastitam, situated, Apashyat, he saw, Sarvabhutani, all living beings, Bhagavati, in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Api, moreover, Cha, and Atmani, on the super soul. Translation. He began to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart and that everyone is existing on him because he is the super soul of everyone. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. That everyone is existing on the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not mean that everyone is also Godhead. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Everything is resting on Him, the Supreme Lord, but that does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also everywhere. This mysterious position has to be understood by highly advanced devotees. There are three kinds of devotees: the neophyte devotee, the intermediate devotee, and the advanced devotee. The neophyte devotee does not understand the techniques of devotional service, of devotional science, but simply offers devotional service to the deity in the temple. The intermediate devotee understands who God is, who is a devotee, who is a non-devotee, and who is innocent. And he deals with such persons differently. But a person who sees that the Lord is sitting as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and that everything is depending or existing on the transcendental energy of the Supreme Lord, is in the highest devotional position. Om Akyanti Mirandasya Kinanjana Shalakaya Shakshu Militamina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so today is also the appearance day of Ramanuja Acharya, and I'm gonna, say a little pastime in the end of the class. I can also read some pastimes depending on how much time we have, but maybe just to start the class with one pastime of him, so we make sure we cover something. And I'm really not an expert when it comes to Ramanuja Acharya and Sri Sampradaya and all of this. But basically, Ramanuja Acharya, he was begging his spiritual master to receive the mantra with who he could serve the Supreme Lord. He was begging him and begging him and begging him, but his spiritual master was not really enthusiastic to give him the mantra. So he was really, not up for it. And Ramanuja Acharya approached him again and again and again, and he just wouldn't give him the mantra. And then finally, Ramanuja Acharya got his teacher to the point of surrender, and he was like, okay, I'm going to give you the mantra, but you cannot share this mantra with anyone else. You can just not share it with anyone else. He was very, very serious about that, because that mantra is only for brahmanas, and if you share it with someone else, it's going to be very, very bad. So it was an instruction of his guru, of his spiritual master. So he gave him the mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. Okay, so he gave him that mantra, and then what Ramanuja Acharya did was, the first thing he did was he went to a village on a hill, and he stood there and he screamed out loud, Om Namo Narayanaya. So everyone could hear the mantra, and he was saying, this is the mantra that will fulfill all your desires. This is the mantra that will bring you to Vaikuntha, to the highest planets. So he was screaming that mantra out loud, which was very much against the instruction of the spiritual master. And then his spiritual master, of course, he got to know that he's just screaming around this mantra that was kept to be secret just for brahmanas, very selective brahmanas. And then he got so mad and so angry at him, and he told him, because of what you did, all these unqualified people, they get no access to such high spiritual knowledge, and they can now be elevated, to Vaikuntha. And because of this, you have to go to hell. You're going to go to hell. So he was kind of almost cursed from his Guru Maharaj because he shared that mantra. And Ramanuja Acharya, now this is very important, he very genuinely said, and he really meant it from the core of his heart, if all of those people can now be delivered and they can go to Vaikuntha, and just for that I just have to go to hell, I'm more than happy to do that. And he really meant it. He just didn't say it, I go to hell for you, Prabhu, no problem. No, he really meant it. And he was really aware that this was maybe the next station for him. And when his Guru Maharaj saw this, that he was so humble and so sincere and so full of compassion, he fell at his lotus feet. And Ramanuja Acharya, of course, gave all credit to his Guru Maharaj. So we can see that Ramanujacharya, although he's not directly in our Sampradaya, he is really imbibing those qualities of compassion, of humility, of tolerance, and he made a huge contribution that the Vaishnava philosophy was spread in India. And, he was going very strongly against impersonalism, and we owe him a lot. So it's just one pastime I wanted to share with you, and it's very much also in alignment with Lord Nityananda Prabhu. And that's the appearance day that is just coming up on Monday. So it's the same mood of giving the mercy even to those who are unqualified, and I don't care and I don't mind whatever happens to me. So it's very much connected to our mood. Now, let's go to this purport, and they're kind of like, like 5 points that Prabhupada is making here. One is that Krishna is in everyone's heart. That the second one is everyone is existing on him. And then the third one is that not everyone is God. But at the same time, he is also mentioning that God is not everywhere. And the last one is about the 3 different kinds of devotees. And one thing I found very interesting is that Prabhupada said, that does not mean that the Supreme Lord is everywhere. Now, when we think about Prahlad Maharaj, what was he saying to Hiranyakashipu? That Krishna is everywhere. And Hiranyakashipu was, where is he? Even in that pillar? Yes, even in that pillar. So what does Prabhupada mean here? So Prabhupada basically talks about that Krishna has a personal aspect. Although his energy is all-pervasive, we know the 3 energies, the external energy, the marginal energy, us living entities, and the internal energy, his spiritual potent energy. He still has a personal form, and he still has his own planet, and he has his own pastimes and paraphernalia, so it's very personal. Because nowadays, people speak a lot about impersonal philosophy. For example, I saw a few days back an interview of Jim Carrey where he speaks about spiritual realization. I don't know if you know him. It's a very famous very famous comedian. So he's saying, well, I realized after my depression, that I'm God, and that you are God, and that everyone is God, and that everything is God, And the interesting thing is when people get this realization, and it can be a genuine realization that they have seen some Brahman aspect or they have experienced the light, what people tend to do in Kali Yuga is as soon as they have some realization, that's the truth, that's it. That's God. And all religions are wrong, and that's just God. But, they are not open sometimes for this holistic understanding. Yes, why can't God be an energy, and he can be in your heart, and he can be a person? So, but even we as devotees sometimes, when we join this movement, we tend to become like, oh, now it's only Indra Prabhu, now it's only this Swami, now it's only that service, that's the everything else is Maya. So we sometimes, also go in that extreme. But actually, sattva means balance. So when Prabhupada says this here, just wants to point out that Krishna is a person, and although his energy is all-pervading, that doesn't mean that we just randomly worship, a cup of water as Krishna, unless we have the proper process and the proper understanding and the proper mantras and so on and so forth. Now, let's talk about something very real, because Prabhupada speaks here about the 3 types of devotees, and I will get there. But first of all, let's understand what happens before we become a devotee, before we join the temple, before we take shelter of Krishna. So we are basically not even a human being. Okay, we're not a human being. So when we read in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where the instructions are given for a society, for one ashram, then there are 20-something qualities are mentioned. And those qualities, if you read them, they're going to blow your mind. And you might think that they're speaking about a pure devotee, a most exalted personality, forgiveness, humility, tolerance, free of anger, celibacy, perfect understanding of the Vedas, so many different things. But they're just talking about being a human being. We're not talking about, being a pure devotee. So being a human being doesn't just come along with getting a human body. And one of the symptoms in Kali Yuga is that there's so much confusion, which is created by, a strong influence of Tamagun. So therefore, when we join the movement, we are usually very confused, very confused souls. It's rare that people join our movement who are already very much established in their identity, in their material identity, who take up the process and who continue on their path. Many times when we come, we're very confused, we're very distressed. Many of us have been, even, living somewhat out of society, exploring different things. So we come there and we're already a bit of a mess, let's be honest, And then we find Krishna consciousness. And it's so amazing. Everything is so clear. Prabhupada writes it, I'm just gonna worship Krishna, I'm gonna chant those rounds, I'm gonna wear some bed sheets, shave my head, and then, that's it. That's all I have to do. And then I'm going back to Godhead. Sounds so simple. And it is very simple, but there's also small print to that. Because after some time, what we usually find when we practice, there's in the beginning this initial enthusiasm. Everything is exciting. Everyone is a pure devotee. Everyone is so happy. It's all so good. And Hare Krishna Prabhu, Hare Krishna Mataji, it's all so nice. And then slowly, after some time, we find that person annoying. We don't understand how something not fully pure and transcendental can happen in a temple. It's inconceivable. Maybe something is wrong with the philosophy. We start to have some doubts. And what am I actually doing here? And maybe what am I actually doing with my life? So, after some time, we start to get some doubts and get some confusion. We get a bit disturbed. And this is just because our bhakti, our spiritual realization, hasn't really gone so deep. Many of us, when we join, it's more like almost like a social event. We join a movement, we join a group of people. People are really nice, who are vegetarian, who are, have characteristics that we have never seen before. And then, okay, maybe in a kirtan or something, we feel some bliss, some happiness, but it hasn't really gone deep. It hasn't really often really touched our heart, and it hasn't really given us a profound shastric understanding yet. So it means we're very shaky. Sometimes we are good, we're happy, sometimes we are down, depressed, sometimes we are steady in our service, sometimes we are very disturbed, and we're very confused. So this is kind of like a state that continues for some time. And this is what Prabhupada speaks about the neophyte devotee. So the neophyte devotee is still very much influenced by the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance. And he has firm faith. He feels that, yes, this is the real thing. I want to be a devotee. These are awesome people. I want to serve the Lord. But he hasn't really understood like the universal principles that Bhagavatam has to offer. Like Bhagavatam doesn't just tell you how to wear bed sheets and shave your head, but it really talks about how to have relationships. If you want to have wealth, how to have wealth. If you want to be successful, how you can do that. If you want to do austerity, like everything is mentioned in the Vedas. And it's a really profound science. And the neophyte devotee has the tendency to really come in the temple and look at the deity. That's Krishna. That's Krishna, and that's what I'm focused on. And I'm focused on the service. But he doesn't see so much that Krishna is also in the heart of every person. That Krishna is in fact in the heart of every living being. That means bacteria and other things in your body too. Imagine how many living entities are just here in this room. It's billions and trillions of living beings. So it's quite far out. So the neophyte has the tendency to, when he's in the temple, when he sees Krishna, then he's like well behaved, everything is clear, everything is good. As soon as he leaves the door, he's somewhere else. It's kind of like, this is Krishna's place, this is the outside world, this is devotees here. And devotees, how does he recognize devotees? I'm not sure if I wrote this down. They don't see anyone who is not in the service of the Lord. So basically, how they differentiate by who is a devotee and a non-devotee is basically by more external factors. So they don't really have a discrimination. Who is a devotee, who is not a devotee, who is criticizing, who is just innocent and just doesn't know so much. So they can't really discriminate because that sattva gun and that knowledge is missing to really discriminate. Therefore, they also make mistakes. They just think, okay, someone has been around for a long time, that means I can just go there and pour my heart out there, or they just know everything. Prabhupada disciple, they know everything. They know everything. They know how to fix cars, they know relationship advice, they just know everything. I can just go to them for everything. Now, senior devotees you can approach for spiritual knowledge, and Prabhupada disciples, of course. I mean, we can be extremely grateful that we have one here in our association, that we still have people coming and visiting us, but we have to use our intelligence when we surrender. So the neophyte devotee blindly surrenders. He just surrenders because of some faith, because of some samskaras, because of some mercy. But then it has to transition into surrender with intelligence. Because otherwise it's like, yes, Prabhu, I went to this person and I opened my heart and I asked for advice and then they told me the wrong thing and I followed and I got hurt. Yeah, but did you think about what you did when you went to that person? Did you have a relationship of trust? Did that person really know you? Did you really explain yourself well? You know, so the neophyte devotee gets often into trouble because of that. So we have to take responsibility when we are in the temple, that we don't just look to the authorities or the temple council or whatever, that they're going to take care of our life. Krishna is going to take care of our life, but we cannot just sit there and pray unless we are fully transcendental. We also have to act and take responsibility. And that's what a neophyte devotee struggles to do. And Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, a neophyte devotee is also expert in arguing, he thinks himself of very advanced, and they imitate. So a neophyte devotee might externally sometimes appear like a first-class devotee, but what they're doing is they're more imitating. They picked up maybe, how the swamis do their pranams and how they look, how they pay their dandavats, and this is fine. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it's okay, when we, for example, chant japa, and we're thinking of an advanced devotee, how they chant their japa, to imitate them, it's actually auspicious, it's good. But again, it's not because they have profound realizations, it's more they're looking, okay, how are other devotees doing that, and they copy it a little bit. And they have firm faith, but they're not conversant with Shastra yet, okay? Now we might think, yeah, neophyte devotee, I know who's a neophyte devotee, the person I'm sharing my room with, he is a big neophyte devotee, So, but then what's an intermediate devotee? What's the next stage? So then Prabhupada mentions many, many times this point of preaching, okay? So does that mean as soon as you go out on the street and you distribute a book, you are a Madhyamadikari, you are an intermediate devotee? Let's see what else Prabhupada says. Prabhupada says in the second canto, third chapter, text number 21, that an intermediate devotee accepts disciples. So any one of you just thought, okay, I think, I'm an intermediate devotee. If you're ready to accept disciples. So what does that mean? Of course, Prabhupada said different things about, being guru, accepting disciples. But my point is, it's quite a big step from neophyte devotee to intermediate devotee. And it's not a black-white thing. It's not that, that it's also not that you run through the different stages of devotional service, Shraddha, finished. Next stage, Sadhu Sangha, finished. Bhajana Kriya, finished. No, it's all, you join the movement and then you are, let's say, 60% on Shraddha, and then you have like 20% of Sadhu Sangha and 10% of, and you even have 0 point something Bhava or Prem, so it's all very dynamic. It's not black and white. So even here, when we transition from the neophyte devotee to the intermediate devotee, it's like a gradual development. So even between the neophyte devotees, you can distinguish. But what does it now mean to be an intermediate devotee? So one thing, again, Prabhupada mentions is preaching. But what kind of preaching? It's preaching, we just heard from Ramanuja Acharya, this preaching with compassion and realization. Not a preaching that is, because we just like, still, it's amazing, you do want to preach, it's always going to please Srila Prabhupada, but I'm saying even in preaching, there's you can distinguish between, I like the service, or I think that's what I'm supposed to do, or Prabhupada mentioned it's good for me to do that, and that's all good. It's all good, we can do that. But the intermediate devotee, he preaches because out of genuine compassion. And how do you get genuine compassion? How do you get that? Well, first of all, you need to have some profound realizations about Krishna. You need to have some experience of Krishna in your heart so you realize, wow, that is amazing. That's far out. This is the best thing ever, a genuine experience in your heart. And when you have that, then when you go outside, when you look at non-devotees, then you don't feel like, some karmis, I'm a devotee, look at me, oh my God, I'm so good, Then we will start to feel, like Prabhupada, driving through London, seeing all people happy in Maya, enjoying it's a Sunday day, which basically never happens in London. So they're all ecstatic outside in the cafes, and Prabhupada is crying. Prabhupada is crying tears, because he really feels so much compassion. He can see where their path is going. So that is compassion. When we then speak to a person, when we then approach someone, they can feel that, we really care about them. And this is exactly another discrimination between a neophyte devotee and an intermediate devotee. Neophyte devotee is like, there's Krishna, get out of the way. They like, this is my service. Why are you here? You're not supposed to do this. Get out of the way. An intermediate devotee understands, okay, Krishna is in the heart of every living being, and especially in the devotees. So let me be very careful and very sensitive how I deal with them. So therefore, we worship devotees, because, of course, of their devotion to Krishna, but also Krishna is in their heart and is very much manifested in their heart. So this is very, very important. So now you can see we transition through realization. And how do we get realization? We get realization through, first of all, really sincerely chanting, japa. Really, when we sit down in the morning, when we chant japa, of course, we have 16 rounds, and sometimes we are very busy, we have a lot of service, and it's never going to change, to be honest with you, whatever stage you're in. But we really connect with the holy name, because the holy name is so merciful. So merciful. Even more merciful than Krishna himself. That he can give us so many realizations. So through that, we can get an experience of Krishna. But then also throughout the day, by being very much aware of what we are doing. When we do our services, that we have some meditation. I'm doing this for Krishna. That when we go to Narasimhadev, like, he's basically our person to go to for everything. You want to get married? Go to Nishingadev. You want to be a brahmachari? Go to Nishingadev. You need financial support? Go to Nishingadev. He's there. He's the maintainer. He provides for you. And we're doing that not to approach the Lord for money, but to just establish for ourselves that he's taking care of me. So we establish a relationship. So we notice, oh yeah, I went to Nishingadev and I prayed. And then this person came to me and they gave me exactly what I was looking for. They exactly told me about a doubt that I have. So that's when the magic happens, when we actually connect to Krishna in a personal way. And then we start to understand, wow, the Lord is taking care of me. And then when someone is approaching us and criticizing us or being harsh to us, then we're like, oh, right, I was praying for humility. That's how this works. Yeah, if we pray for humility, if we pray for that, what do you think is going to happen? that you wake up one morning and you're humble. Krishna surely has to make some kind of arrangement so you get an opportunity to show your humility. And therefore the temple is also like, it's an intense environment, of course. But do you think outside it's less intense? If you think that, then I think a bit, you're not seeing things properly. But of course, in the temple, the intensity is that you don't have so much of your own space. If you don't like someone, you have to see them every day, every morning, every daily greeting. You're constantly surrounded, by those devotees. So there is some intensity. But what we have to understand is that this is all meant to elevate us. This is happening for us. Again, that doesn't mean that we tolerate any kind of abuse or control, but it means that we are very much aware that we are here to spiritually elevate ourselves. We're here to give, and we're not so much here to take or to have high expectations. This is not the "can you fix my life" institution, okay? This is the institution for Krishna consciousness. So we come here to receive deep, profound realizations and to then situate ourselves nicely. So this is very important to keep in mind when we approach spiritual life. Now, you can also say that the intermediate devotee, as it's defined here, and I know there are different statements in different shastra, the Madhyam Adhikari, if you look at it carefully, is on the state of Nishta. Because most of his anarthas are gone. It's said on the state of Nishta, 75% of your anarthas are gone. And most of the remaining karma is basically so you still have a material body. Because to have a material body also means that you have some karma left. So when we transition slowly to that stage, we have to keep in mind that the intermediate devotee and the stage of Nishta is a very advanced stage. And it's quite a journey there, And then, of course, if you go further to the highest stage, we're talking about stages of bhava and prem, where, someone just sees like everyone like a cowherd boy in the spiritual world, and they're fully transcendental. And so therefore, Prabhupada mentions that the Uttama Adhikari, the first class devotee, has to come down to the intermediate platform to preach. Because if he's on the highest stage, he is like, Mahaprabhu and Jagannath Puri, constantly in ecstasy and absorbed in the pastimes. He can't really preach. I mean, he can preach just by his being there, and you just see that bhava and prem that person is experiencing. But a preacher discriminates. So then he comes down to that platform of discriminating between the devotee, the non-devotee, and the innocent. So basically the Vaishnava, the innocent, and those who are envious. And that a true preacher can do. He can really see who is a devotee, and not by dress. It's not because you're wearing a dhoti that means, it doesn't say much, to be honest with you. So he looks at, okay, he is a Vaishnava because of the qualities he's manifesting. The qualities, the behavior, the characteristics, the service attitude, the commitment to the service, all are signs where we can see how advanced someone is. And it's a balance, Definitely when someone is committed for 10 years for one service and we see some bad behavior, we should still understand that must be an elevated person, because they have shown so much commitment and dedication to his service. At the same way, that's no excuse that they should not change their bad behavior. But we should understand that, if someone is really committed to a service, that they're quite elevated. At the same time, when we see someone really displays very devotional qualities, and not just, in the temple when everyone is looking, but, especially in provoking situations, that's actually a test. So many times I talk to devotees, and when I counsel them, they come, I was fine. I was breaking through, I was chanting my rounds, and then she came along, and then everything fell apart. This happens quite a few times, when brahmacharis change their ashram, and there's some weird situation that They're like, oh no, I fell down, and oh, I'm not on my spiritual standard. No, how we react, and it can also be the other way around. It usually tends to be more man. How we behave in provoking situations, that shows our greatness. When we are in distress, when things are intense, how much humility are we showing then? How much tolerance are we showing then? That's the test. When everything is fine, when we are in our comfort zone, when no one is bothering us, when everything is good, yeah, then I can also be humble. You know, Kadama Kanana Maharaj told this beautiful pastime that he was driving, I believe, in a train. I'm not sure if you know that pastime. And he was sitting in that train, and everyone was there, so kind and friendly to each other. You know, sometimes you go out in the world and you think like, some of these people, they have better behavior than the devotees back in the temple. You know, they're so kind, how are you, so friendly. And he was describing that he observed that, and he thought, wow, you know, they're quite friendly and kind and generous. And then suddenly, boom, the train couldn't move forward anymore. There was some technical issue, and they were in the middle of nowhere. And then people started to freak out because there was only one bus to take people, and the other people had to wait. And then the true nature came out. You know, I'm first, you know, and they were kind of like pushing each other aside. And so when they are provoking situations, that's where we can understand where we are at. When our husband, our wife gets on our case, how much tolerance do we have? When temple commander comes and asks us, can you do that other service? It doesn't mean we should always say yes to the temple commander. Sorry, Prabhu. You know, but but it means like, how are we reacting? Are we like, no, Prabhu, you don't understand, you come again? Like, are we completely losing it? Or are we like, okay, Prabhu, just want you to know that I'm more than happy to do the service, but I also want you to know that I already did that today, and that my mental state is somewhere here, you know. I'm like on the edge, I'm freaking out, I'm about to lose it, Prabhu. I need some help, you know. I'm just exaggerating now. But, you know, that's like kind of where we can see where we at. How much can we respond from sattva, and how much are we responding from an agitated mind? So this is how Krishna is also testing us. You know, how far have we gone? You know, it's easy now also to give a class, to be in the temple, or to chant japa and look like you're very absorbed, but Krishna knows what's going on. Krishna is in your heart. And Krishna will gently show you, confront you with your reality of where you are at, so you can understand and so you can move forward. So then, you know, when we have someone who's Madhyamadikari, you know, who is advanced, or who is moving close towards that, he can understand. That person is envious. That person is constantly criticizing. That person is constantly pushing others down. You know, that's not really a devotee. Or that person is very innocent. They don't know about Krishna. They were not as fortunate as I am. So they don't know about Krishna. I have to give them the mercy. Oh, this person, if I tell them more confidential knowledge, they're just going to expose, you know, how this is all nonsense. So they have some discrimination that is very important. But this discrimination is something that we need to develop as devotees. We need to start to discriminating who we go to for advice, how we respect authorities, how do we deal with an environment like the temple, what is going to happen after our time in the temple. You know, yes, if we do sincere service in the temple, and we are very sincere, Krishna, and even if Krishna is always going to take care of us. But that doesn't mean that we're just on autopilot all the time, and then suddenly we hit a rock, and then we don't know what to do. So we have to think of how we can situate ourselves nicely in our Krishna consciousness, so we can practice. His Holiness Tama Krishna Goswami, he mentioned in a class, I think 98 or something in London, he said, the problem with the devotees is not the chanting or that they get the chanting wrong. It's social issues. You know, how we are situated, what ashram, what is our varna, how do we maintain ourselves. That's what's causing devotees so many problems. So this is a very important aspect of Krishna consciousness, to understand our human platform and to also be very much aware that we are Kali Yuga people. and that we're not going to be like Shukadev Goswami overnight. Maybe some very, very rare souls that come for a very specific purpose, but most of us, we see the false ego can manifest in two ways, essentially. One is, I'm the best, I won the marathon, or I'm the pujari, I'm the this, I'm the that, I'm the best, I'm the best devotee ever. I'm not going to show that, externally I'm going to be very humble, but internally I know. So false ego, pride. But the false ego can also manifest in like low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is like, I can't get anything right. Everyone is just so much better than me, and I don't deserve Krishna's love, and I'm this depression. Many devotees are suffering from this, and sometimes they go and they think like, I'm like Raghunath Das Goswami. I'm more fallen than a Warman stool. But I can tell you, when Raghunath Das Goswami says that, it doesn't come from low self-esteem. It comes from the understanding that he really sees Krishna and all of Krishna's beauty, and that he feels himself like so insignificant when he compares himself to Krishna. That is true humility. Low self-esteem, constantly criticizing yourself, being hard on yourself, beating yourself up. That is not humility. That is not humility. That is just another manifestation of the false ego. That everyone can get the mercy, but you cannot. Everyone can succeed in Krishna consciousness, but you are not. It's just false ego, just as much as I'm the best, which also happens, which is of course as much not, unfortunate than the other situation. So sometimes, we have to become really aware of what our mind is telling us all day. That means we need to be aware. It's so easy to come into the temple, switch on autopilot, and just go along all day, do your things from morning till evening, and I'm sure you can be so busy in the temple. I don't think any one of you needs some more service. Any one of you feels they need more capacity? Anyone? Please show your hand. Okay, so in the back there's one person, Varsha Govindadev Prabhu. But usually that's not a problem in the temple, okay? Usually that's not a problem. Usually we are quite, we have it up till here with services and things we can do. Right, Mark? Especially when we're very qualified and we know a lot of practical things. So now we have to be careful that when we do things, we are very, very mindful and aware. And we're not just going about our day from morning till evening without checking really in with ourselves and Krishna. Because it's very easy to get into this mood in the temple. Just be busy all day, do this, do that, chant our rounds, and try to get some reading in and just be busy and busy and busy. But how much are we really connecting to Krishna? How much are we really appreciating that I'm the association of devotees, that I'm so fortunate to live in the temple right now? I'm so fortunate to be in front of the Lord. How much are we consciously taking all of this in? This is actually going to determine how much we will grow in our Krishna consciousness. This is Sattva Gun. This other thing is Raja Gun, it's passion. And yeah, sometimes, when there's a festival and we have many guests, and sometimes we can't go to Govindadev. Okay, Govindadev, I need an hour with Krishna now. Please go away. I need the temple room for myself now. I need to connect myself. I heard this class. So, of course, it's time, place, and circumstance. But in general, we need to take time every day to genuinely connect to the Lord, to be aware, and to understand that we need to take care of our physical health. Yeah. Prabhupada made many statements that health comes first, then comes our japa, and then comes our service. Many times for us it's the other way around. First comes service, then comes japa, and health is maybe the running around during the day. I don't know. But if you're not taking care of your health, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health, then you're not going to be able to do much in Krishna consciousness. So we have to find time for that as well. We have to become mature individuals. We have to become saints, personalities that when other people come in here, that they are blown away by our behavior, by our qualities, by our ability to take care of ourselves and others, by our compassion, by our service attitude. It has to be a holistic thing. Not that, okay, there was this time with the Krishnas and then, it's a universal thing, Krishna consciousness. And when we take care of these different aspects, and I think, there's pranayam classes here, the yoga classes here, there's so many things going on in the temple we can take advantage of. So, this is very, very nice here, actually. And the Uttamadhikari, of course, the most elevated devotee on the stages of Bhava and Prem, really exalted. That's not something we need to discuss so much because it's not so relevant for most of us. And if it's relevant for you, then you just know, and you can talk to your Guru Maharaj. But for most of us, we struggle to make this transition from neophyte to intermediate devotee, from the lower modes to the higher modes, to purify ourselves, to be compassionate towards others and towards ourselves too. Good. So then, now we're coming up to Lord Nityananda Prabhu's appearance day. And Lord Nityananda Prabhu is just the most merciful incarnation of the Lord. Lord Nityananda Prabhu is basically the reason why we're here today. Of course, with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but what Lord Nityananda did is it's just inconceivable. Imagine, he allowed Madai to throw an earthen pot in his face, so he started to bleed. He's the Lord in everyone's heart. That means he allowed this to happen. He took pain on himself because his compassion is so much greater for us. And Lord Nityananda Prabhu is Krishna. And Lord Nishingadev here is also, like Ramananda Prabhu always says, the manifestation of Mahaprabhu, because we're in Kali Yuga. So Krishna is extremely, extremely compassionate, and it especially becomes expressed in this form of Lord Nityananda. Krishna is crying tears in the spiritual world because he sees how we are suffering. Those qualities of compassion is something we can truly meditate on this appearance day. How Nityananda Prabhu is so agitated, how he's so disturbed because we are so much in illusion, because we are so far from Krishna. This is the quality of Lord Nityananda, that he goes above and beyond to reach out to us fallen souls. When he went with Advaita Acharya for the first time to, Jagai and Madai, everyone told him, don't go to these fallen, like these criminals. And let's keep in mind what Jagai and Madai did. Let's keep that in mind. They murdered, they raped, and they did all kinds of really heavy and bad stuff. Keep that in mind, okay? So we're not talking about just someone who is, very much absorbed in material life. They were really going to an extreme. And still Lord Nityananda and Advaita Acharya, they really went for it and wanted to give them the mercy. And Jagai and Madai were so agitated when Lord Nityananda Prabhu came. Krishna is your mother, Krishna is your father, he is your greatest wealth. Please chant the Lord of Lord Hari. And Jagai and Madai, in their trunk state, running after them, wanting to kill them because they gave the holy name of the Lord. They wanted to kill them. And still, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, he was just laughing, he was just having a good time because there was just so much compassion and so much desire to share love of God. And then eventually, when he kept going there again and again and again, Madai took this earthen pot and smashed it at Lord Nityananda. And Mahaprabhu got to know about this, so he ran towards the scene and he took his chakra and he wanted to kill Madai. But then Lord Nityananda reminded him that he's the most merciful incarnation. And he actually pointed out that Jagai, look, this Jagai, when Madai wanted to hit me like a second time, this Jagai, he actually stopped Madai. So you actually have to show him mercy because he's the one who protected me. And then Mahaprabhu, being so grateful because, and this is another important principle, he was recommended, Jagai was recommended by Lord Nityananda. He was so happy and so merciful and he embraced him. And then of course, Jagai was so purified being embraced by the Lord that he became ecstatic. He got the experience of Krishna Prem. And then Madai saw this and he's like, that's unfair. We did all of these criminal things together. We did all of this nonsense together and you're giving him your mercy but not me? And then Mahaprabhu said, because you have offended my devotee, I'm not going to give you the mercy. This is therefore, Vaishnava apparats, they can totally block our spiritual advancement. When we offend a devotee who's dear to Krishna, then we basically, that's the best way to ruin your spiritual life. But then, of course, because Madai surrendered to the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda and asked for forgiveness, Lord Nityananda forgave him, and then he also received the mercy of the Lord. So when we offend devotees, that's really where we can only beg for forgiveness to that person and chant a lot of japa. And what is really offending a Vaishnava? It's really having the ill intention in the heart. There might be an accidental offense. We offended someone we really didn't mean to, and we can clarify the situation. And we should also forgive devotees. We shouldn't be like, oh, you've offended me, I'm not going to forgive you now. Never again. Now you're going to hell. See what you've done. No, we should be very forgiving and compassionate with others. When a devotee, when he's offended, he actually doesn't take offense. That's one quality of a devotee. But when our brothers or sisters are being hurt and attacked, that's when we stand up and that's when we don't tolerate. But things that go towards ourselves, we are Trinada Pisu Nishinata Pisu Ishnana, Amanina, Manadina, Kirtaniya, Sadahari. Give all respects to others, more tolerant than a tree. But when it comes to others, we want to protect. So, and this is what we see here, that the ill intention in our heart is what we have to watch. And even though they had this ill intention, because Nityananda still forgave them, and they received the mercy of the Lord. So much compassion. They killed people, they murdered people, they ruined Brahminical sacrifices, they did so many sins that Yamaraj and their assistants, they couldn't even keep up with it. Imagine to meet such a person, a murderer, a rapist. Still, they received so much mercy. So that means there's so much hope for us. And don't think that you haven't done something like this in previous lifetimes. Most of us have killed, most of us have done abominable things. So this is coming up on Monday, such a wonderful opportunity to chant the holy name, to serve the devotees, and to also see that Lord Nityananda, when Madai was just in tears because he had received the mercy, and Mahaprabhu, he actually turned black in one pastime because of all the sins he took on. Madai was so disturbed because when you advanced as a devotee, you realize your position, that you're actually insignificant. You realize that you're actually not so special. But you are special in the sense that Krishna loves you, okay? And that makes you feel very healthy. But he realized he had done something wrong. So he really he begged Nityananda Prabhu, what can I do? What can I do? I committed these offenses, I'm so fallen. And then Nityananda Prabhu kept telling him, you just chant the holy name. But then he wouldn't stop asking him. And then he said, okay, you can do some menial service. You can build this ghat, I believe at the Ganges, and that's how you can serve the people and kind of rectify your behavior. So we can also understand that when we do a mistake, when we do an offense in our spiritual life, that menial service is one of the ways to show our repentance, to show that we want to improve and better ourselves. So, and as a last point, because it's just something I forgot to mention, remember Krishna is in your heart, and Krishna is your best friend. There's only one person that is never going to leave you, is always going to be with you, is always going to help you, and that person is right in your heart. And although we might not be Uttama Adhikaris or very exalted devotees, we can talk to Krishna now. We can experience Krishna now. We can pray to him now and establish that personal relationship with him. Okay, good. So I'm going to end here and see if there are any comments or questions or any input you want to give. Yeah? Oh, yeah.
Role models. We're missing role models in our association where we can learn by their example and by their purification. Sometimes maybe a Madhyam flies in for some days, maybe even a Uttama, but it's very rare. So what is how we can still accomplish something when we need some high quality association to get purified. Previously we lived with one lived with the guru or something like that, and you could learn from him and he could constantly correct you, but here we have to kind of correct each other, but we're not really compassionate, we mostly envious of each other, and our correction is motivated by this. So what chance do we have? What do you think?
Well, what comes immediately to me is this point that when we are sincere, first of all, then Krishna will also put us into situations where we see devotees that might or might not be on a more exalted stage, displaying behavior and qualities and attitudes that we need ourselves. So I always felt that when we're sincere, then Krishna makes the arrangement for us to kind of notice, to see those qualities in others, even if there might not be, like Uttama Adhikaris, flying around with Bhava and Prem. That is one thing. And also the other thing is that when we read Bhagavatam, when we hear, we kind of like associate, right, with those saints. When we hear a lecture, we associate with that person. And that is a lot of association we can take. But I agree, of course, that it's not like, and we see places where there is, a very advanced person in one place constantly. We see how that community is just expanding like anything, and people are really surrendering. But then we also see when that person leaves, the community starts to get a bit shaky. So I think that it's our responsibility to do our best to display such qualities and to also look for those qualities in others. And I think if we have that attitude, then Krishna will show us. At least when I come here to the temple many times, I feel very inspired from some of the behavior and qualities and attitudes of the devotees. So I think that, not just I think, this is what Shastra says, as we also advance more, we can even see instructions and qualities like in non-devotees or in trees or in animals. We just kind of like look at them and because of our advancement, we see that in others and we see the good in others. I know that still leaves you a little bit with, the situation, but we don't have guru here and we don't have advanced souls here, but that's what I would say. What do you think?
I don't want to expand it too much longer, but one point I just wanted to clarify again. You said by listening to lectures and stuff like that, but I saw also temples where everybody is doing his service and everybody has this earplugs inside and is kind of in his own bubble. And what would you say, what is superior, being in the association and really associate, or being in the association and get the association from maybe more hearing from a more qualified person?
I mean, I think that really depends on your attitude. If you feel like they're all Kanishta Adhikaris, let me put my earplugs in, because if I sit down with them and talk with them and take prasadam with them, I'll just be contaminated by them. Wow, that's an attitude. I don't think it will get you very far, to be honest with you. Then if we do some service where we are essentially alone with our mind, and then we want to hear a lecture, I think that's a good thing to do. So I think it depends on the attitude that we have. Again, are we associating with someone who really like, I really want to see Krishna, I want to see the good qualities in that person, please inspire me, or we like, he's not supposed to do that. I read that in that book, he's not, I'm just, just randomly looking at you. But what is our attitude? Because this happens actually a lot. We read, how is this book called? Hari Bhakti Vilas by Sanatana Goswami with all the rules. The new Bhakta reads that and then he goes around, oh boy, oh girl, here, you're not supposed to do that, and you're not supposed to do that, and we go around. But this year we should actually never do, unless we are like Ramananda Prabhu or Govindadev Prabhu, we are a position of authority. They have to actually point out when you do something wrong, because that's their service. But otherwise, we can just chill and just take it easy and just take the humble position. Now you look at me like very grave. I know you didn't like me to say that. But the point here is again, Vaishnava association is so special and we need to learn to appreciate it. It's something very precious. So that's what I would say to your answer. It's the attitude.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
My question was related to the point of health that you made.
Yeah.
And because just in this context, in the story of Devahuti and Kadama Muni, we also had some lectures some time before where we were discussing this topic, and I want to hear your opinion.
Yeah.
Because Devahuti, she fully sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
She completely neglected her health.
Right.
And she was just, oblivious of her body and just focusing on her higher duty.
Right.
So it was not really ignorance, it was not really neglect, but at the same time it had that effect.
Right.
So how can that be brought in, how it seems like a contradiction.
Say the last thing
It
again?
seems like a contradiction.
Oh, right, yeah.
So when is sacrifice and neglecting your health okay, so to say?
I know exactly what you mean. This is and what I would say to that is, first of all, Devahuti was a very, very exalted personality. Many times we just point out how Kadama Muni was so exalted, but Devahuti was actually equally exalted. Although, yes, we go through the pastime and then she's confused and she's surrendering to her son, but again, that's a sign of her humility and her sincerity. And also part of the pastime that, yes, she was confused. And okay, maybe yes, Kadama Muni was a bit more exalted, but she was also very, very exalted. And the other thing is, what you have to keep in mind also is, what ashram are you in? She was behaving like someone who is in the last order of life. And therefore, when she came back into, the Grihastha ashram, when she came back into actually doing something, not just leaving your body, basically serving until you're leaving your body, then she actually asked, and Kadama Muni actually took care of her health because she needed it for her service. So I would say it's connected to what stage you are in. If you're a sannyas, then you're not gonna, but even then, if you want to preach, so it's a stage of life, and second of all, what service you have. Can you still do your service? So we take care of our health so we can serve, not so that we can show ourselves what a nice shape we are in, and and make that our priority. Health is there to take care of our service, ultimately. So that's, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but so therefore I don't see so much of a contradiction, but more of time, place, and circumstances. And keeping in mind that she was very exalted. If we are very, very exalted like her, and we can serve like that, and when we then get in bad health like her, we can still keep serving, we can still keep chanting. If you're that qualified, then maybe you don't have to take so much care of your health. But many, many people who are getting older describing how difficult it is to chant, how difficult it is to hear when your body is in bad health. So, what do you think?
Well, I just remember some Sankirtan stories. Some devotees like Param Shreya and Shivatma used to tell that sometimes they were so absorbed they forgot to wear shoes and they went out barefoot in the winter or something like that, So that's of course not good for health. But what I'm trying to point is that maybe there are some situations where, but that's what it seems to me in the case of Devahuti, that she's just so absorbed.
Okay.
She literally just forgets her health.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
yeah,
like the situation where you actually, it's not that you're neglecting it, you're so absorbed in something higher and so absorbed and so taken over by something, I don't know, transcendent or spiritual or a duty, that you forget. Like when you're super excited about a project, you might not sleep all night,
Right.
Which, usually is not a good idea, but, like Prabhupada also encouraged this Chaitanya Charitamrita marathon, and it's like incredible stories, how like people just used to sleep on the chair while painting and wake up and continue painting,
Right, right.
So, I don't know, there might be situations where,
Yeah, you're right. There are situations where we might be so ecstatic and so absorbed that, we naturally don't feel like sleeping, or we don't feel like, however, when we try to just imitate that and it's not a real realization in our heart, then all kinds of issues come. And that's what I've seen a lot. People, not taking care of their health, but actually not because they're in the mode of Shuddha Sattva, but because in their mode of ignorance and passion. Like, this is also interesting. Yes, when you are absorbed in a project and you don't sleep all night, the question is it passion or is it genuine, So it's a very interesting point. And of course, when Prabhupada was there, people did all kinds of crazy stuff. Or even after Prabhupada, if you hear about Sankirtan devotees. So I guess you can also have different opinions about that, and I believe there are different opinions about that in our movement even. So it's not like, because if you look at Prabhupada's quotes, you can basically make Prabhupada say what you want him to say, unfortunately, if you really dig deep. Prabhupada said different things about health at different times. So, where I'm coming from is simply seeing also the past in our movement, and seeing how often we were not able to maintain something is usually a sign of the mode of passion. But of course, like if we are generally inspired to stay up all night to chant the holy name because it's Ekadashi, or because we're building something, or we're on the marathon, that's okay. I think that it's a balance. That's what I would say. It has to be a balance. Yeah. What? I have to end? Okay. So have a wonderful Krishna conscious day, and please pray for me that I can remain in your association. Srila Prabhupada ki. Vaishnavinda ki.
Permanent.